They think I'm a failure. They have no idea what's coming. I know they're laughing at me. I don't need to hear the whispers to imagine exactly what they're saying. My mother and sister are seated in the grand living room of the Carter family estate, swirling crystal wine glasses filled with the finest Bordeaux. Their lips curl into amused smirks, their eyes glinting with the familiar air of condescension. She's probably throwing herself into another ridiculous project and forgetting to eat again. Or maybe she's failed again. How long until she finally accepts she's never going to make it? They never say these things to my face. They don't have to. Their opinions have haunted me for years. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 32 years old. And to my family, I am nothing but a failure. While they host extravagant parties, negotiate million-pound deals, and rub elbows with London's elite, I spend my nights in a tiny apartment, working 90-hour weeks to build a company they've written off as hopeless. The truth? I am about to achieve something they never saw coming. I was never the Carter they wanted. I never fit into the Carter mold. My father is a powerful businessman. My mother a sharp-witted woman whose face graces fashion magazines, exuding perfection. And then there's Rebecca Carter, my younger sister, the golden child. She's everything my mother ever wanted. An Oxford degree, a prestigious career within the family business, and a perfect marriage to Damien Holt, heir to one of London's largest banking empires. And me? I was the disappointment. Even as a child, I never belonged at the lavish Carter galas or at their investor dinners. I preferred numbers to mindless socializing. I spent hours poring over stock market trends instead of perfecting my posture to impress aristocrats. To them, I was always the odd one out, the forgotten daughter. I still remember the day I walked away from Carter Industries. When I told my parents I wanted to build my own fintech company instead of inheriting the family empire, my mother set down her wine glass and looked at me as if I had just uttered the most absurd thing imaginable. Evelyn, you'll never succeed without this family's backing. The world isn't as easy as you think. But I didn't care. I was done living by their rules. I rented a tiny apartment, gathered a team of brilliant developers, and threw myself into my work, drowning out the constant ridicule from my family. Rebecca never missed a chance to mock me. Of course, Rebecca never let me forget how much of a disgrace I was. She would show up unannounced at my apartment, draped in designer labels, her tone dripping with mockery. Evelyn, you're still chasing those delusional dreams? Do you even know how embarrassing it is for Mother to explain your differences to her friends? I never responded. I knew exactly what they thought of me. But their opinions didn't matter, because what they didn't know was that I was already miles ahead of them. And soon, they were about to find out. They thought I would fail. Now I'm worth £75 million. Leaving Carter Industries meant starting from nothing. For the first 2 years, my life was unrecognizable from the world I had once known. No more luxurious parties. No more 5-star vacations. No more designer dresses. Instead, I lived in a tiny, cramped apartment in East London, where I worked and slept on a second-hand couch. I did whatever it took to survive. To keep myself afloat, I took on any job I could find, writing financial reports for small businesses, analyzing data for struggling startups, coding AI algorithms that I believed could revolutionize financial markets. But breaking into fintech wasn't easy. I knocked on every investor's door, trying to convince them that my AI platform could change the financial world. All I got in return? Rejections. This technology sounds interesting, but how do we know it actually works? AI for financial forecasting? Too risky. And honestly, your track record isn't strong enough for us to bet on you. The same dismissals, over and over. Each night I sat in front of my computer screen, wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But every time I thought about giving up, I remembered my mother and Rebecca's contemptuous stares. I remembered how they always saw me as the failure of the family, and that kept me going. The breakthrough that changed everything. My team and I kept refining our AI system. We gathered millions of market data points. We tested thousands of models. We failed countless times until we finally achieved the impossible. Our AI could predict financial market trends with 92% accuracy, a number no system had ever reached before. This was my turning point. I made a decision: no more chasing investors. Instead, I took the last of my savings and put my AI system to work in the real market. 6 months later, £10 million in profit. The investors who rejected me came running back. Word of my AI system spread fast. The same investment firms that dismissed me were suddenly eager to meet. But this time, I wasn't begging anymore. I sat across from a top investment firm's director, watching as he tried to keep his expression neutral. "Evelyn, we're very impressed with your technology. We'd like to invest. What valuation are you expecting?" I smiled. £75 million. And that's the minimum. The deal that made history. 3 months later, I signed a £75 million investment deal, skyrocketing my startup from an unknown fintech company to one of the most valuable in London. And I was just getting started. They thought I would fail. Now, they have no choice but to watch me succeed. On fire. The day I took everything back, Rebecca Carter's big day had finally arrived. All of London's elite gathered to witness one of the most extravagant events of the year. The 5-star hotel gleamed under dazzling chandeliers. Silk-white drapes cascaded from the ceilings. Tables overflowed with imported roses, and champagne flowed endlessly. Business moguls, politicians, and aristocrats filled the grand ballroom, not just to celebrate Rebecca's wedding, but to witness the union of two financial empires, Carter and Holt. I stepped inside, and the world noticed, not the Evelyn they once knew. I was no longer Evelyn Carter, the exhausted, overworked outcast they once mocked. Draped in a sleek black Versace gown, I walked through the lavish hall with calm confidence. My hair was elegantly styled, my lips tinted in deep red, and my eyes gleamed with a quiet power that no one had ever seen before. My mother spotted me first. Her brows furrowed, but she quickly masked her surprise with her usual composed elegance. "You made it, Evelyn." Her voice was neutral, but I caught the slight tension in her gaze. From across the room, Rebecca beamed under the golden glow of the chandeliers, hand in hand with Damien Holt, her perfect, wealthy groom. But when her eyes met mine, her smile faltered. She approached me, scanning my outfit, my demeanor, everything. Then she smirked. "Oh, what a surprise! You actually made it on time. And in Versace? Not bad." Her entourage of socialites giggled beside her. I didn't flinch. I simply raised my champagne glass, swirling the liquid inside, waiting for the perfect moment. The gift that changed everything. The evening unfolded with endless speeches and grand toasts, filled with polite applause and artificial smiles. I remained silent, waiting, watching, enjoying. Then it was time for wedding gifts. One by one, extravagant presents were displayed. Diamond jewelry, Rolex watches, £1,000,000 stock shares, rare art pieces. Rebecca soaked in the admiration, reveling in the wealth and status of it all. Then, it was my turn. I stepped forward, placing a simple white envelope on the gift table. Rebecca's brows arched, amusement flickering across her face. "An envelope? You're not seriously giving me a handmade card, are you?" Laughter rippled through the guests. I said nothing, just smiled. She opened the envelope. Her smile vanished. The ballroom fell dead silent. Inside the envelope was a contract, a £75 million investment deal. The same company they mocked me for building. It was now one of the most valuable fintech firms in London. Rebecca's fingers tightened around the paper, her voice barely above a whisper. This is real?" My mother snatched the contract. her eyes scanning the figures. She paled. Whispers erupted across the ballroom. Evelyn Carter owns a fintech company? Didn't they say she was a failure? Rebecca's eyes darted to me, wide with disbelief. How did you... I lifted my glass, took a slow sip, then said smoothly, "You were right, Rebecca. I never came to the family parties. I never lived in a luxury apartment. But while you all laughed at me, I was building something no one in this family ever saw coming." And then, the final blow. Before the shock could settle, the ballroom's massive screen flickered to life. A headline appeared from London's most respected financial journal. Holt Enterprises on the brink of collapse. Signs of financial instability exposed. A wave of gasps filled the room. Rebecca's face drained of color. Her new husband, Damien Holt, went rigid, his hand clenching into a fist. I tilted my head slightly, watching Rebecca's composure crack. "Here's another fun fact, Rebecca," I said, my voice casual. "My AI system doesn't just analyze financial trends. It predicts corporate collapses." I took another sip of champagne. "And unfortunately for you, the Holt Empire isn't as stable as you thought." Rebecca staggered back, her world crumbling in real time. Guests whispered in hushed panic. Some began quietly leaving, not wanting to be associated with a financial disaster. Even my mother, usually so composed, turned to me, her voice losing its usual arrogance. "Evelyn, did you know about this before today?" I shrugged, setting my champagne flute on the table. "You always said I didn't belong in this family's world, Mother. But you were wrong." I let my gaze sweep the stunned crowd. "I don't just belong here. I am redefining this world." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving behind a ballroom filled with shattered expectations. That night, the world no longer saw me as the forgotten Carter. That night, I became the Carter they would never, ever forget. The fall of Rebecca Carter and her rise again. 3 days after the wedding, Rebecca called me. For the first time in her life, her voice was unsteady, frightened. "Evelyn, I need your help. The Holts, they're losing everything. Damien, they're investigating his finances." I leaned back in my chair, my tone calm and measured. "I warned you, Rebecca, but you never listened." She swallowed hard. "You can't just leave me like this. I'll lose everything." I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. Then, I said, softly, "I'll help you, Rebecca. But on one condition." A tense silence. "You will work for me, from the lowest position. No special treatment, no private office, no personal assistant. You'll learn how to work like everyone else." Another long pause. Finally, she whispered, Okay." I smirked and placed my phone down. The fall of the Holt Empire. The collapse of Holt Holdings spread faster than anyone expected. Headlines dominated financial news. Holt Empire drowns in debt. Bankruptcy looms over London's banking giant. Investors abandon Holt Holdings. Confidence plummets. Holt family's fortune in jeopardy as banking sector investigates fraud allegations. Within a week, Holt Holdings stock crashed by over 60%. Major banks froze their credit lines. Strategic partners severed ties. The lavish wedding that was meant to solidify their social dominance had now turned into an open disgrace. Damien Holt, once hailed as a financial prodigy, was now facing intense scrutiny for reckless investments. And Rebecca, once the perfect bride of London, had become tabloid prey, not for her glamorous lifestyle, but for the ruins of the empire she had just married into. A desperate sister returns. Rebecca came to see me. This time she didn't stride in wearing Chanel or luxury heels. She looked exhausted. broken. Her golden hair was messy, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. She was no longer the Rebecca Carter of high society. She was a woman on the brink of losing everything. Evelyn, I don't know what to do. I have no money. Damien's assets are frozen. Mom and Dad, they're struggling too. I folded my arms, studying her. Now, you see, Rebecca? Life isn't just about parties, designer clothes, and elite dinners. When everything falls apart, the only thing that keeps you standing is your own abilities. And you never built anything of your own. Her lips trembled. I get it. You were right. I was wrong. But I want to change. I held her gaze for a long moment. Then I spoke. If you truly want to change, you start working today. You'll join my company as a financial analyst assistant. No special treatment, no privilege. Work like everyone else. And if you can't handle it, you can walk away. Rebecca nodded, this time without argument. Okay, I'll do it. Rebecca's first day at work. I watched her from afar as she arrived at my office. No chauffeur, no assistant opening doors for her, no red carpet treatment. She stepped in like any other employee, dressed in a simple blazer instead of her usual high-fashion wardrobe. For her first assignment, I gave her a basic financial report to analyze. Within an hour, she had dozens of mistakes. She entered my office, setting the paper on my desk, her voice shaky. I don't know how to do this. I've never done anything like this before. I leaned back, my expression calm. Then learn. No one is born knowing everything, Rebecca. But if you don't try, you'll always be someone who depends on others. She bit her lip, then turned and walked back to her desk. For the first time in her life, she was willing to learn. A slow transformation. Weeks passed. Rebecca struggled. She made errors in financial calculations. She misunderstood industry terms. She failed to compile accurate reports. But this time, she didn't quit. She stayed late to fix mistakes. She read financial textbooks. She asked colleagues for guidance. Bit by bit, she started to understand how things worked. 3 months in, she wasn't the same person. One afternoon, she walked into my office. No hesitation, no fear. I just finished the risk analysis report for the client. Can you review it? I skimmed through. For the first time, there were no errors. I nodded. Good, but keep improving. She didn't expect praise, just progress. 1 year later. A year had passed. I had expanded my company, increasing its valuation to over £200 million. Rebecca had grown too. She was no longer a privileged heiress living in luxury. She was a competent, hardworking analyst, someone who no longer relied on a family name. Even our mother, once my biggest critic, no longer mocked me. Instead, her calls became brief, polite check-ins, not because she finally approved of me, but because she respected me. And as for me, I no longer cared about their validation. I had succeeded not to prove them wrong, but because I knew I was capable all along. A different kind of victory. One evening, Rebecca stepped into my office. Evelyn, would you like to have dinner? This time I'll pay. I studied her for a moment. Then I chuckled. Fine, but let's pick a place that's not too extravagant this time. She smiled. I get it now. For the first time ever, we weren't standing on opposite sides. And that was the greatest victory of all. The legacy of Evelyn Carter, lessons from a woman who refused to break Evelyn Carter's story, isn't just about revenge or proving her family wrong. It's about perseverance, self-worth, and redefining success on her own terms. Here are the powerful lessons from her journey. 1. Success doesn't come from privilege. It comes from relentless effort. Evelyn was cast aside, treated as irrelevant in her family's power games. But instead of clinging to their wealth, she built her own empire with her intellect and resilience. Rebecca, on the other hand, believed status and marriage would secure her future. Yet when the Holt empire crumbled, she realized, without personal skills and hard work, nothing is permanent. 2. Not everyone will see your worth, and that's okay. At the start, no one believed in Evelyn. Investors rejected her. Her family mocked her. Everyone saw her as a failure, but she didn't seek validation. She believed in herself. Her success wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving herself right. 3. Arrogance and entitlement are the fastest ways to fall. Rebecca once thought marrying into wealth meant lifelong security. She assumed her family's name would always protect her. But when the Holt empire collapsed, she faced the terrifying reality. Depending on others is never safe. Your own skills and adaptability are your only true assets. When everything else is stripped away, only your ability to stand on your own matters. 4. The ultimate victory isn't revenge, it's growth. Evelyn could have humiliated Rebecca. She could have let her drown in her downfall. But instead, she offered her a chance to rebuild, not out of pity, but because she knew true victory isn't in someone else's downfall. It's in building something you're proud of. Success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about living a life where their opinions no longer matter. 5. Second chances exist, but only for those willing to change. Rebecca lost everything, yet instead of collapsing, she chose to start over. She took the lowest position in Evelyn's company. She made mistakes, worked late, and learned. And after a year, she wasn't the same woman anymore. Failure isn't the end. Staying the same is. As long as you're willing to grow, there's always a way forward. 6. When you're strong enough, you don't need approval. Your success speaks for itself. For years, Evelyn was ridiculed by her family, but in the end, her company was worth over £200 million. Her work shaped the financial industry, and she didn't need her family's recognition because she had already won. She never needed her mother's praise, her father's approval, Rebecca's admiration, because she built her own value. When you are strong enough, you don't need to seek validation. You just keep moving forward, and the world will recognize you on its own. Conclusion: the legacy of Evelyn Carter. Evelyn's journey isn't a fairy tale. It's a story of grit, growth, and breaking free. It reminds us nothing is impossible unless you give up. You don't have to prove anything to anyone but yourself. Entitlement will destroy you, but perseverance will take you anywhere. You can always change if you're willing to face the truth. The world won't hand you the life you want, but if you're strong enough, you can build it for yourself.